Types of radiation. Alpha radiation. Now, this is the emission of alpha particles from the nucleus. And an alpha particle consists of 2 neutrons and 2 protons, which is basically the same as a helium nucleus. So it's got a mass of 4 and a proton number of 2, which is why the alpha particle is represented by that Greek letter alpha and then 4 and 2. Now, when an alpha particle is emitted, the nucleus loses 2 neutrons and 2 protons, so it loses 4 units of mass. So its atomic mass will go down by 4. And its atomic number also goes down by 2 because it loses 2 protons. Now, if you're doing higher tier, then you need to be able to work with this equation and show what happens if a particular atom breaks down by alpha decay. So atom X, whichever one you're given, with an atomic mass of A and atomic number of Z, will decay to form atom Y with a mass of the original number minus 4 and a proton number or atomic number of the original number minus 2. And don't forget, at the same time as that, an alpha particle is emitted, so you have to say plus alpha particle. Beta radiation. Now, this is the emission of beta particles from the nucleus, and beta particles consist of 1 electron. Now, this is emitted as a result of 1 neutron in the nucleus changing into a proton. Now, the atomic mass doesn't change because a neutron has the same mass as a proton, but the atomic number does increase by 1 because there's an extra proton. And again, if you're doing higher tier, then you need to be able to show that for a particular atom in this equation. So atom X with a mass of A and a proton number of Z will decay by beta radiation to form atom Y. The atomic mass, A, doesn't change, but the atomic number goes up by 1, Z plus 1. And don't forget to show that a beta particle is emitted as well. Gamma radiation. Now, this is emitted by some nuclei after they've emitted an alpha or a beta particle. Now, gamma radiation isn't actually a physical particle, it's just electromagnetic radiation. It has no effect on the number of protons or neutrons remaining in the nucleus. Ionization. Now, radiation is extremely hazardous because it has the ability to ionize atoms. In other words, to knock electrons out of them. And this makes the atom unstable, and it can lead to damage in a cell, including damage to the DNA. Separating radiation. Now, different types of radiation can be separated by an electric field and by a magnetic field. The extent of deflection, which means bending away from its path, depends upon the mass. Now, alpha particles are the heaviest, so they're deflected less than beta particles. Gamma particles are not deflected by either. Now, if you're doing higher tier, then you need to be able to explain the differences in deflections according to the particle's mass and charge. So this table here summarises what you need to learn about each type of particle. Half-life. Now, radioactive nuclei are said to decay because they break down as they emit particles, and eventually they can decay no further. So that means that the radioactive count decreases over time. The count is measured using an instrument called a Geiger counter, and this detects the number of decays per second. And we measure this in half-life. Half-life is the time taken for the count rate to halve. And this basically tells us the time taken for the number of nuclei of the isotope to halve. And just out of interest, you don't need to learn these, but here are a few common isotopes and their half-lives, and you can see that they vary from a few seconds in some cases to millions of years in others. Now you might be asked to use a graph showing half-life to answer some exam questions. So you can see this graph is typical with time on the x-axis and a percentage of carbon-11 remaining. Now carbon-11 is an isotope of carbon. So at the beginning of the time period it was all carbon-11, 100%, and after a couple of hours the carbon-11 has completely decayed. So look at the question. A sample of carbon-11 gave a count rate of 2,000 counts per second. How long will it take for the count to fall to 250 counts per second? Now, here's the worked answer. After the first half-life, that count of 2,000 has halved. So the first half-life, it's 1,000 counts. And then after the second half-life, that's halved again from 1,000 to 500 counts. And then after the third half-life, that count has halved again from 500 and 250. So it's taken 3 half-lives. Now, we saw a second ago that the half-life for carbon-11 is 20.38 minutes. So it's 20.38 times 3, which is 61.14 minutes. Try and work this one out for yourself. So from the graph, find the half-life for chlorine 39. So again, time across the bottom, number of Cl39 nuclei, how long does it take for the count to halve? Now you must indicate you're working on the graph and your curve or point must be clear. So use your ruler, draw a straight line across at the halfway point when the count rate is halved, and then read down vertically how many minutes that is.